I'm delighted to open this panel, and we'll host our panel with Professor Ming from Peking University Law School. Welcome. And our commentator is Professor Yuri Pinnis from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, the Institute of Asian and African Studies. So please, Professor Ming.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank Professor Ministry for your kind invitation for me to be here. And secondly, I feel very sorry that I just finished my paper and I have not submitted to the organizer. So if you need it, please let me know. The topic of my presentation is sovereignty and the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, the Chinese perspective. My task is to discuss and explain the Chinese perspective on sovereignty. This year happened to be the 60th anniversary of the Declaration of the 5 Principles of Peaceful Coexistence. These two issues could be discussed together. In 1954, China, together with India and Myanmar, put forward the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, that is, mutual respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, mutual non-aggression, mutual non-intervention in each other's internal affairs, equality and mutual benefit, and peaceful coexistence. In the past 60 years, despite the tremendous changes of international community and of China itself, the 5 principles has been consistently insisted by China as the basic principle in foreign relations. In my opinion, the best way to understand the Chinese perspective on sovereignty is to analyze the meaning of the 5 principles in practice. Mutual respect for sovereignty is the core of the 5 principles, not only because it is listed in the first place, but also because it is reflected in the other 4 principles. The 5 principles demonstrates the essence of the Chinese understanding of sovereignty. The first part of this presentation deals with the contents of the 5 principles with the aim to examine what sovereignty means to China. The second part tries to explain the reason behind the Chinese perspective. The third part discusses how China's perspective is challenged by the idea of popular sovereignty. The first part, China regards sovereignty as the power of the state. It is a state that is sovereign, so sovereignty is also called state sovereignty. Sovereignty belongs to the state, and it is the power of the state. This is the starting point of the Chinese perspective. However, the state is not an abstract concept. It is composed of government, people, and the territory. In the Chinese perspective, state sovereignty refers to the power of a government or a ruler, regardless of the political system or the origin of the government. Then what is sovereignty? Most of the Chinese scholars hold that sovereignty means the highest power internally and independence externally. Sovereignty is not absolute, but restricted by international law, which reflects the consent of the states. This opinion is in line with the traditional theory of sovereignty. For China, sovereignty is also about territory. Territorial sovereignty plays an important role in the Chinese perspective. The core issue of territorial sovereignty is its integrity. For China, territory integrity has a particular implication, mainly concerning the issue of Taiwan. Right now, besides Taiwan, Xinjiang and Tibet are also considered as core interests of China relating to territorial integrity. Mutual non-aggression is related to non-use of force. For China, it primarily means not to use force to violate the territorial sovereignty of another state in international relations. For China, non-aggression also means that without the authorization of the UN, no state shall use force for any reason, including humanitarian grounds. In particular, to achieve regime change by force is forbidden, even if such use of force is without a territorial claim. Non-intervention in internal affairs is an important part of Chinese perspective. Internal affairs not only include the political, economic, and social system of a state, but also the exclusive power to govern the state. Intervention refers not only to coercive interference, but also non-coercive measures of various kinds. Equality is an inherent part of Chinese perspective. In Chinese view, any state is sovereign, regardless of its size or power. All states shall be equal in international law. Sovereign equality is an important principle of international law. Chinese perspective on sovereignty has its inner purpose, which is to pursue peace. For China, peace not only means peaceful coexistence, but also peaceful communication and international cooperation, the final aim of which is to achieve the common development of all states and the well-being of all people. Several characteristics of the Chinese perspective can be summarized as follows. First, it is defensive. Principles like territorial integrity, non-aggression, and non-intervention are meant to defend coercive or non-coercive intervention by foreign powers. Second, it is reciprocal. 4 out of the 5 principles include the terms of mutual. Third, it is practical. One of the policy objectives of Chinese perspective on sovereignty is to maintain and consolidate its power of internal governance. Second part. We have to admit that China's perspective on sovereignty is deeply influenced by a traditional Western theory of sovereignty. For example, Jean Baudin's name can be found in each and every relevant textbook in China. Chinese understanding of sovereignty in line with the traditional Western theory that the sovereignty is the sovereign power of a state or ruler. However, any transplanted foreign culture is inevitably influenced by the local culture, and so it is with the concept of sovereignty. China's perspective is also shaped by the Chinese people's understanding of their own history and culture. There are at least 3 local factors in this respect. First is the authoritarian mindset. Ancient China used to be a centralized state. The Republic of China was constantly ruled by political strongmen. After 1949, the Chinese government has actually adopted the authoritarian way of governance. Since the reform and opening up starting from 1978, China has pursued a liberal policy in economy, but no significant progress has been made in political field. Such authoritarian regime inherited from history is a fact in China, and it has inevitably affected the Chinese people's thoughts. Most Chinese still believe in and show respect for the authority. This is one reason why Mao could have launched the Cultural Revolution. Therefore, it can be said that a perspective of sovereignty oriented towards state sovereignty or the power of government has a social foundation in China. Second is the victim mentality. Since China has suffered from external aggression and interference in modern history, there is a widespread mentality of shame and hatred among Chinese people. To quote Professor Onuma, it is called the victim mentality. As a result, ideas like national independence, territorial integrity, etc., can be really popular among Chinese history. This mentality is not only a solid foundation of the Chinese perspective, but also a diplomatic trump card for the Chinese government to defend against the Western complaint about China's human rights situation. Third is the racial civilization, which is a key point of the Chinese Confucian tradition in China. Rituals refer to social manners, institutions, and norms on the one hand, and the individual's spiritual pleasure on the other, the combination of which leads to interpersonal peace and harmony, as well as that between man and nature. The racial civilization dominated the foreign relations of ancient China, though such relationship was different from the international relations in modern times. For example, ancient China treated its vassal states with due respect, generally did not intervene in their internal affairs, and stayed neutral in their civil wars. Influenced by the ritual civilization, ancient China attached importance to culture and used the culture to conquer the hearts of others in a gentle and peaceful way. The ritual civilization followed the philosophy that peace and harmony shall be cherished. In the Ming Dynasty, even if China took the lead in technology and economy in the world, the huge fleets led by Zheng He in his 7 overseas voyages acted as an envoy of friendship and performed the mission of peace. The Chinese perspective is characterized by the ritual civilization. In today's world, China treats even the smallest third world countries equally, advocates non-use of force and non-interference, and pursues peaceful coexistence with others. All of this reflects the idea of the ritual civilization. Such a tradition also gave us the good to believe that China's propositions of peaceful rights and a harmonious world are not groundless. The third part, the challenges faced. Since 1978, China has undergone tremendous changes. These changes are primarily the result of reform and opening up. However, China's attitude to respect and obey international law also play an important role. China's achievement in economy, to some extent, verifies the rationality and the validity of its position on state sovereignty, as well as its sovereignty-oriented approach of international law. And it also strengthens the legitimacy of the Chinese government internally. But on the other hand, with the development of popular sovereignty and human rights in international law, the Chinese perspective and the traditional approach of international law are faced with great changes. First of all, whom is the sovereignty belongs to? The ruler or the people? According to the principle of popular sovereignty, some scholars argue that international law only respects sovereignties arising from open and free elections. They also argue that the principle of respect for sovereignty in international law only protects popular sovereignty, not including the usurpers. Based on the same theory, new concepts and mechanisms have emerged in international law, such as the responsibility to protect. Second, can human rights still be considered as domestic affairs where the principle of non-intervention can apply? The answer is definitely no. Then, if there's a violation of human rights, what measures can be taken by the international community? Third, in case of a serious violation of human rights, is it allowed by the international community to change regime by force? Is it necessary that the use of force must be authorized by the Security Council? In the field of international law, China is faced with two more challenges. First is how to shoulder more responsibility on the international stage with its ever enhanced national power. Second is how to settle the territorial disputes with its neighbors in a peaceful way so as to truly realize the so-called peaceful rise. As for the challenges mentioned above, I would like to briefly impress my opinion. First, I doubt that international law has developed into the stage of democratic international law, which takes into account the nature of sovereignty or the origin of government. At present, the international society is composed of sovereignty of various kinds. This is a fact. Therefore, democracy is an ideal of international law, at most lex ferenda. Second, the responsibility to protect adds important element to the concept of state sovereignty. Indeed, sovereignty not only refers to power, but also means responsibility. It is the unity of the two. Third, the respect for human rights has become an important principle of international law. China has been the state party of many human rights treaties and has prescribed the respect for human rights in its constitution. As a result, China should not only respect the human rights of the Chinese people, but also clearly object to human rights violation by other governments. Human rights should be included in the Chinese perspective on sovereignty. Fourth, Any use of force in international relations must be authorized by the Security Council. Fifth, China must be committed to peaceful development. Undoubtedly, China's territorial claims surrounding its borders have been formed in history and supported by a lot of evidence. What China is doing now is to further maintain these claims. But in any case, it's imperative to avoid the use of force. This is not only required by the international law of peaceful coexistence, but also revealed by the historical experience and the lessons of China. Finally, I want to do a brief summary. The essence of China's perspective on sovereignty is demonstrated in the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. This perspective and the 5 principles have stood the test of time and proved to be valuable to China. However, with the development of international law, such a self-defensive perspective of sovereignty should also be modified. In particular, the responsibility to protect and the respect for human rights should be added. This is not only important for China to realize its Chinese dream of democracy, prosperity, the rule of law, and peace, but also crucial for the Chinese government to consolidate its legitimacy in governing the country independently. Thank you very much.